Okay, guys, we're going to go ahead and just continue our legal defenses lecture. Keep in mind, I gave you guys just the first part of this. It was about 11 minutes long. This one is going to be pretty quick to wrap this up. So first, I do just want to remind you, we talked about number one, how there was no criminal act that was committed, that legal defense. What I want to do now is move on to number two, where we said there was no criminal intent that was involved. So basically what this is saying is, if this is someone's defense, they'd be saying, yes, I did do this. However, there is a reason behind it, where the defendant can go ahead and say that, yes, a criminal act was committed, but that act was in fact justified. Now, for today, I just want to give you one of these things where you could say that, yes, a criminal act was committed, but that act was justified. What we're going to be talking about today is going to be the self-defense. Now, self-defense seems fairly cut and dry, but there are going to be some very serious limitations and some areas that the law says you must be within certain parameters in order for self-defense to be used to be found not guilty. Now, first one, I do want to explain how using self-defense, you must prove that you believe there was imminent danger, that there was all but guaranteed danger that was going to take place of bodily harm to you or even death. If you can prove that, yes, there was imminent danger, it was going to happen, you're allowed to use what's called a reasonable amount of force. Now, using a reasonable amount of force, this is usually kind of left to the arena where you're in public, you're in the street, you're in a restaurant, whatever it is. Using self-defense is only acceptable when you use a reasonable amount of force. So I always use this example. If you're walking on the street and someone randomly approaches you and punches you, a return punch is considered to be a reasonable amount of force. Now, it always kind of depends on the incident as to what a reasonable amount of force is. And really, it's just up to the jury to decide what a reasonable amount of force might be. So I go back to my example of, if someone comes up on the street randomly and punches you, it's very possible that if you pull out a weapon, we'll say if you pull out a knife, then that is not reasonable amount of force, that might be considered excessive. But it does somewhat depend on the jury as to what they think a level of imminent danger might be. Now, I use that because when you're in public, when you're on public space, it's going to have some different definitions versus if you're on your own private property. If you're in your home, then this idea of self-defense is expanded to a certain amount, where now reasonable force does expand to the idea of using what's called deadly force. Now, deadly force can be used to protect your own personal private property. Now, what the court has said on multiple occasions is, if someone's in your home, if someone is in fact a threat to you in your home, then yes, you can use deadly force of what's often called the Make My Day laws. Now, it kind of depends on the state in which you're in, but Colorado is what's called a Make My Day state, in that it allows people to defend their homes and their property using deadly force. You can, and I have to be specific here, in certain situations, you can, in fact, use deadly force on someone who is in your home. But the court has said on multiple occasions there are very serious limitations to that. Now, as we go forward, we're going to talk more about the limitations to this and how it's not just a blanket statement. There are going to be some ways that you can, in fact, try to say it was self-defense, but a court could find you guilty. Now, we're going to talk about that more going forward. So this does conclude this day of our legal defenses notes. We're going to continue when I see you guys later on to talk about number 3, committing the act but not being criminally responsible.